We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. Very excited to have with me tonight the one and only Brad White. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to be here, and just a little bit nervous to talk about client horror stories.
I think anything great, you feel that little bit of nervousness in your stomach beforehand, which is a good sign, a premonition. We're going to have a great episode right now.
Absolutely.
And with that, let's jump right in. Tell all of us about your most powerful, terrifying, best client horror story.
Well, I mean, the good news is we only have a few of these, so it's not a normal,
Yes.
everyday, regular occurrence. But when we have them, it's not good. And so, just a little bit of context for folks, because otherwise, some of the
Please.
terminology that I might be using might be kind of alien. So our company is VARC Solutions. We do everything QuickBooks. So that's an accounting software program that a lot of small business owners use. And so not only do we do like the bookkeeping and consulting, we also do migrations. Migrations are kind of like one of the hardest things to do in our space, because even though some people have been using QuickBooks on the desktop side of the platform for a long time, a lot of them are moving to the cloud. So they're moving to a cloud version of QuickBooks. And even though they both say QuickBooks, they're very different. Like the desktop and the cloud, they're very, very different. And so when somebody's trying to migrate from desktop to online, you can't just click a button and have it be done. Or at least that doesn't happen normally, right? So we usually get the call when they've tried to do the migration themselves and it just didn't work, right? For whatever reason, right? So they're calling us up and they're relying on us to be the experts to guide them, advise them, and then also do the work to get them from the desktop to the cloud. And as part of that process, when we have chats with our clients, we tell them, here are the things that can go wrong. Here are the ways that this project can go sideways, and then let them make the decisions. Like, do you really want to do this or do you not want to do this? Because here's some problems. Well, invariably, when we do these projects, they do go sideways. So like, for example, and again, this is a little bit in the weeds, but apologies for that, but just for the story, at least, we do the types of migrations where we're taking data out of an existing file and moving it into another place. And that usually involves things like, your customer list, the people that have been paying you, the vendor list, the chart of accounts, the products and services that you sell. Those are the easy things. And we do those all day long. But a lot of times people have been using QuickBooks for a long time. And so they want all of the last 10 to 20 years worth of history in their file that they've been tracking. They want that moved to the cloud. And the short story is, it's always a little bit of a mess. It sounds simple, right? Just get the data out, get it in this new system, but it's always a mess because the two systems are very different.
By the way, I just want to have two footnotes in there. First, the fact that it is always a bit of a mess is the reason why you have a business. If you were just, click and it worked, no one would ever need you.
It's a great point. great point. We are in a business because we're experts at this thing, and people are relying on us because they don't know how to do it themselves. They've tried and they failed. Great point.
And by the way, I just want to make another slightly tangential but tech nerdy point. I used to run a Salesforce development shop, and it's incredible to me. But basically, Salesforce just put all these completely different systems and just like branded all of them Salesforce, even though it's like different technologies bought separately, and they had no relation to each other. And it was constantly confusing to the consumers. Wait, how come this hand can't talk to that hand? No, it's all Salesforce. But even though it all has a Salesforce label, it's incredible how under the hoods, they're effectively different companies.
Oh, absolutely. And quite frankly, in the accounting space, ERP space, That's not uncommon at all. Sage is exactly the same. There's like 5 different versions of Sage. There's 50, 100, 200, 300. Microsoft Dynamics is the same. There's like 4 different types of Microsoft Dynamics. It is kind of crazy. And I think it's part of like the, smaller companies getting gobbled up by bigger companies, which get gobbled up by bigger companies. But like in our case, it's different, right? Intuit, the company that makes QuickBooks, they own both the desktop and the cloud, and they've always owned them. And so they've had the ability of making them the same.
They don't have an excuse.
Their excuse is when they started out with desktop, they made it a really, really great product. But when the QuickBooks Online product came out, here's a little bit of the backstory. They had the option to make the online be and look and feel exactly like the desktop. But they said, look, if we do that, we're not going to be taking advantage of the cloud capabilities. Like if we're literally just trying to cookie cutter, go take this and move it into the cloud, we can't use the cloud like it's meant to be used.
Right.
Just like having an app that ran on a server and now you're trying to use it on a mobile phone. If they made it exactly the same, you'd be like, this is terrible. So they intentionally made the online product different because they thought they could make it better and more cloud capable and cloud centric. But they created a problem for themselves at the same time because the software, again, is very, very different. It looks different, feels different. It has different functionality. Literally, there's features that are in one that don't exist in the other. I mean, it's funny. Like here's a little bit of a side, and I know you appreciate going down rabbit holes.
Love it.
When we hire bookkeepers to work for our company, we ask them the question, like, do you know QuickBooks? And they'll say, yes, I do, or no, they don't. But obviously, they're trying to get a job, so they're going to say yes. And so we'll ask them, have you used QuickBooks Desktop and also QuickBooks Online? And of course, they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, well, do you like one versus the other? And they're like, no, I like them both. I mean, they're exactly the same. And when they say that, that's telling me that they don't really know the software.
Red flag.
Yeah. So it is kind of funny. I
love your subtle trick question.
Yeah, it's like when you do know the backstory, when you do really know the software, it's easy to kind of catch people that are like just trying to put on a good face. So, so back to the story, like, so when we have these conversations with clients and they want this history, they want the last year, 2, 3 years worth of history, we tell them that if we do this for you, it's going to be a mess. Like literally, there's features that you're using that don't exist in this new software. There's just no way to match up years and years and years of data by simply importing separate parts and then trying to magically make them all match up. It's very complicated. And so we tell them, we don't recommend this. We don't want to take your money and do that. We would rather do it the right way. We'd rather tell you how it's supposed to work and do it the right way, and then get you up and running very, very quickly so that you can start this new system and go forward. But a lot of them just have this notion that, no, I need to have the history. And it makes sense.
So just to be clear, when you say you recommend do it the right way, what you mean is start from here forward on the system with, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Start from here and go forward. And that, again, this is kind of accounting speak, but we make sure that the before and after balances are the same. If you ran a P&L on both sides, they would match. If you ran a balance sheet on both systems, they would match. There's just no underlying history to support those numbers other than just like the entries that we made.
Right.
And some people just want to be able to run a report from 5 years ago, drill down into it and see the invoices, and the payments and the deposits. And we're like, yeah, you don't really want that. I know you think you do, but you really don't. So we advise clients against it. But again, a lot of times those clients are being told by someone else that, no, we have to have it. And so invariably we've done these projects sort of against our recommendation, and almost, not always, but in many, many cases, it ends up becoming a nightmare for us because the customer ends up blaming us that we did it wrong, or that we were incompetent, right? Like we just didn't know what we were doing. Like, because if we knew what we were doing, it would have been perfect. But we tell them up front that it's not going to be, and it's going to be really, really costly if they want us to do this. So in some of the scenarios that we've had with clients where we've done this work, we've done the work. It's taken 20, 30, 40, 50 hours of manual like data manipulation to get this thing working. And then at the end, they're not happy because it is a mess, like we told them it was going to be. And then they don't want to pay us. And then they give us bad Google reviews. And so it's just on and on and on.
By the way,
really a real hard thing.
You threw out a side comment about 30 seconds ago that's worth calling out, because you said sometimes we recommend against doing it, but we do it anyway when they insist. I know nothing about QuickBooks, so every industry is different. I found that when you give strong recommendations to clients and they go against it, it always goes badly. So it's much stronger to be like, this is the way we do it, and you want to do something completely different, go with someone else.
Yeah, and I know you're one of the things that you like to talk about on the show is like how you know what's the lesson that you learned, right?
Yeah.
What did we learn from doing that? Well, maybe we're a little hard-headed when it comes to this, but I mean, we have learned to do that. We've learned to basically say we're not going to do that. But here's the funny part, like, so again, we're a small business. We've been in business for, I guess, going on 26 years. And so we do feel like we know what we're doing here.
Right.
But we're not always talking to the owner of the other business, right? Sometimes we're talking to an office manager. Sometimes we're talking to an internal accounting person. We're not always talking to the owner, and they're the ones that say, no, I need this, right? I need this history. And so the lesson that we've learned through that is when we do have clients that are insistent that like I have to have this historical detail, I basically have told my team that if they truly want it, I have to talk with their owner. Like I need to have a conversation as the owner of our business with their owner of their business, because I want that owner to be aware, not just what their team is trying to do that's going to turn out to be a problem, but I want the owner to be fully aware of the implications. I mean, it's like we can do this. It's just really, really hard, and it's not easy to get right.
Yeah, that is a good point, because what you're effectively saying is that to do this, there is a trade-off, and like there will be all these problems. It's not a one-to-one mapping. So the question really is, how badly do you want this? And owners will almost always be like, no, I just thought it'd be cool. It's not that important. While when the owner tells a VP of this, who tells a manager of that, who tells this, this accounting manager, do this, then it's just come down from the hierarchy. We need this feature.
Exactly.
And they can't really push back against you.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting about it is I haven't actually had to have many of those conversations. I've not had to have many owner to owner chats about it, because usually when the person on the other end hears the message, my owner needs to talk to your owner, that's when they start going, well, maybe, do we need this? Do we really need this? I'm not sure if I want to, have my boss come in and say, no, what do you mean they're asking for all this stuff? No, we don't want to mess. We wouldn't pay for that, because ultimately that it ends up being very costly, and it ends up taking months. I mean, literally, they're expecting a 3-day conversion, and it could take months. And usually, to your point, the owner is the one that's going to be able to come in with a little bit of, no, this can't take 3 months, and no, we can't, pay, 10,000 instead of 3,000. That it wouldn't be worth it to do that. So no, let's not do that.
Yeah, it's incredible to me when companies define like RFPs and what they want. There's no concepts of, let's say, prioritizing features, because often it's like, let's just ask for this. Why not? But it's often it's like one little nice to have is the thing that makes it 10x as complex and risky, and you have to do extreme methods to keep that away.
Well, speaking of RFPs, I mean, do you do RFPs? Because like when people reach out to us and they're like, hey, we've got an RFP for a project we'd like you to quote on. I've again, similarly, I pretty much have told my team we don't do RFPs.
So I have a lot to say on that. Boil down of my RFP analysis is no, I don't do it also. But here's the more detailed, interesting version is long ago, a younger me used to do that.
Yeah.
And and never want any. And what eventually I realized, like being in the weeds and a couple of times with it, I came to the conclusion RFPs is kind of a rigged system. Like
Yeah.
every company knows who they want to hire, but for like technical reasons, procurement mandates, you have various options. That's when they put out the RFP. So 100% of the time, you're just one of the other options, so they can really choose who they want.
Yeah.
The
No,
only reason to do an RFP is if you know you're going to be the guy that gets it going in.
yeah, absolutely. And I've tried to be better and smarter at it too. And I think we still never win. We end up spending 4 weeks of our lives hammering away on this presentation, writing this very,
Totally.
very long, intricate, detailed thing, right? And then it turns out they just chose the lowest bidder. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. Or we've, again, when I've tried to be a little bit more thoughtful about it, I've said, hey, before we do this RFP, can we have a phone call? Can we actually just have a short conversation so that we can see if we're even a good fit for this project before we go spend the next 4 weeks of our life, writing and responding and answering questions and having, all these different calls. And I've been just maybe a little bit like you. It's like I've been shocked at how little people that are putting those RFPs out and wanting people to respond, they don't have the respect or the decency to say, yeah, we'll give you 30 minutes of our time to
Yeah.
to see if you might be a good fit. They're like, no, 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 do the RFP and then we'll see if you're a fit. No.
Yeah, it also connects to some of my approaches to marketing as well, which is I always argue that if you're going into a competition where or trying to convince people to buy and you're exactly like everyone else, like you lose. You're exactly like everyone else, they'll always go with the lowest bidder. And either you will never be the lowest bidder, or if you are, you're not making any money. So in these sort of they're looking at all that polls uh, solution approaches. The only way out, in my experience, is to somehow convince them that you're not an apple or they don't want an apple, and like to break free.
Right.
And it's hard.
It is hard. Yeah, because someone is saying we have to do this, and it's usually it could be a government contract, it could be a nonprofit organization, or it could be like a nonprofit board that is saying we must get 3 quotes, we must get 3 bids, and then have this long drawn out evaluation process. And yeah, I don't know whoever wins. I don't know who wins these things because we're typically not on the winning side of it for
No,
whatever
no,
reason.
no. In my experience, having been on the inside in a few, the winner is the one that knows they're the winner going in. It's the
Yeah.
company that they've worked with for years doing this, but procurement mandates that they have other options. Or it's the company that the CTO used to work with at his last job and he wants to bring in that company, but company rules mandate that they get 3 quotes, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., etc. So like,
Yeah. So maybe
yes,
you
so
got to ask the question like, well, so are you accepting bids from anybody you've ever worked with before?
exactly.
Yes, well, we are. Yes. Well, yeah. Well, how about this? Work with them and let me know if it works. If it doesn't work out, give me a call.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
So, question. I love the context and this general complex situation that you've described where companies want this but they really don't. We've already gotten a few lessons from that. Does a specific incident come to mind where this happens and it was particularly painful that you might want to talk about so we can extract some even more and more specific lessons from it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, and again, we've had several, so it's not as common. I mean, we have very, 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 very good Google reviews, but yeah, just like with any company, there's a few that are like, oh, that didn't go
I,
well.
I appreciate for the listeners you emphasizing that this is one in a million.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, so again, without naming specific companies,
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anonymous. The point is learning.
for sure. One of the other scenarios that we had was, again, they typically all the really challenging ones do revolve around this migration process, because normal QuickBooks consulting, I mean, when you're an expert, it's really not that hard. It's not hard for us. We do it all the time. These migrations, especially when we're leading people through a process that they've never been through, that's really the hardest part. And so, yeah, there's another one in particular where definitely we learned some things during the process as well. But like,
Please.
yeah, so like we were doing a migration where not only was somebody migrating from a QuickBooks desktop to a QuickBooks Online, but in addition to that, they were also trying to implement a different CRM system at the same time. Okay.
Ooh, wow.
So
By the way, that's like crazy high risk doing two migrations on the same set of data at the same time. That's like a
yeah.
ticking time bomb.
So I guess
Oh no.
we're gluttons for punishment over here. Well, and to be fair too, we weren't doing both concurrently, but they were two steps, right? It was like migrate to
Yes.
QuickBooks Online and then connect the
Right.
CRM system. So they were very closely tied, very closely
Yes.
related, but not exactly at the same time. So we started working with a particular person at this company. They were the ones that we had the conference calls with. They're the ones that we mapped out the project with. They're the ones that we had all the conversations with, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're not going to do. This is how long it'll take, etc. Quoted, did all the due diligence and all the process with this one person that we were being told was like the primary contact, the only
Mhm.
person we needed to speak to, right? And invariably, it's a similar problem, right? So we did the migration. There was historical data that was trying to be merged over, and it wasn't a clean export or import. And by the way, another little side topic, one of the other things that I think a lot of people in this space don't realize, we're not just migrating what we might assume to be clean data from one system into another system. So
Mhm.
not only are we migrating from one system that's vastly different than a whole nother system, but the data itself can be variable in how clean or dirty it is. Okay. So you can imagine, let's say you're a business and you've been maintaining your own books. Okay. Well, one set
Right.
of books that has been well maintained, the coding is correct, like you've recorded things to the right income accounts and
Right. Right.
expense accounts, the accounts receivable, accounts payable, it's all right, right? You've reconciled your bank accounts and credit cards in their current. Okay. That's a fairly clean set of books. Another completely different scenario where the coding is not right, AR is already wrong before we even try to import it. The account's never been reconciled. They've never reconciled their bank account. They've never reconciled their credit card account. So in this particular situation, it was more of the latter, where it was the data itself was also not pristine, but we were being asked to import it. And so the same story. The end result is we were able to migrate them over. The data that they asked us to import, we imported. It was a little bit of a mess. That interestingly enough, the person that we had talked to, they weren't the ones that were having all the problems. It was actually other people on their team that
Oh.
then blamed us for being incompetent because the data was so messy. Like, we imported this data and they're like, we can't use this. How are these people in business? Because they couldn't even, migrate our file over with all this data that we asked them to. They weren't even part of the conversation where we told the primary contact that this was not a smart idea and that it was going to be a mess. So then they blame us for creating a mess as if we were just bad at the migration, which is not the case. So that was one.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
let's discuss that
Yeah.
that's just for a moment, because that is interesting, because part of the problem there is the warnings about the bad data, for example, you would have given to your contact, but the contact didn't pass them on to everyone else. And in real life, like the game of telephone, the children's game of telephone
Yeah.
is endemic, happens all the time. And of course, like the middle woman is like, will not pass on all of like the footnote risks, details, risks. Will just be like, here's the URL, go try it. So it's actually an interesting question about how to minimize these sorts of risks. Something I've done in the past is when there's this middle sort of person, and I know people that they're communicating with that I don't have access to need to know things. I would often do things like write one pagers with the important details and in big red letters, the warnings, and be like, hey, here's an intro guide. Please pass this to everyone on your team. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but it's an attempt to minimize that risk.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, one of the things that, again, I think we're still learning, right? We're still learning this lesson, and it's hard to know for sure before you get into something like this. But you know, there's that concept within sales that you know you need to make sure that you're addressing all the needs of all the different stakeholders. Okay, well, who are the stakeholders? You know, you're not working in a perfect system where you know all the stakeholders. You know, and that's why it's like, okay, well, I need to have a conversation with the owner because I know that owner is a stakeholder in the outcome of this thing. They're the one that's going to be super, super unhappy if this takes a long time, cost 10 times as much as they were hoping it was going to cost. So I want them in the room. I want them in the conversation. There's other people that, again, they may not have time to be in those initial conversations, but they need to be, right? If I'm not talking to the CFO, if I'm not talking to the owner, if I'm not talking to the CPA who is going to then look at those books later in the year to do taxes, it's like, who are the people? So I asked my team, who are the people that are going to be the most upset if this project goes south? And those exactly are the people who need to be on those initial calls. And if they don't have time, let us know when you do have time, because otherwise we don't need to have this conversation, right? So getting the stakeholders in the room is part of our process. It's part of like what makes it work. But again, if we, to your point, if we don't know that there's another person that's going to be upset and they're not being brought into the conversation by their team, it's really, really hard to know, you know, without saying, okay, well, who else should be in here? Okay, well, we got John. Okay, who else? Susie. Okay, great. We got Susie. Anybody else? Well, no, maybe Betty needs to be. Yeah, okay, Betty. Anybody else? Like, how many times can you ask that question, you know, before you feel like you've got the right people in the room? And in this particular case, again, we didn't have all the people in the room. So the lady in particular that we were working with, you know, we basically said, hey, these two systems are very, very different. A lot of times there's a learning curve to get up and running with this new system. Would you like us to also train you and your team in the system, right? The new system. And the answer is, well, and I think we can do it on our own. We know we can't afford that, or no, you know, we'll just do it on our own. So in this particular case that we're talking about, not only was the data messy and they blamed us, also we got a couple bad Google reviews from other people on the team that we never spoke with, never ever had a conversation with, that blamed us for basically migrating them and then disappearing. Like how could you migrate us and not teach us how to use this new system? People on your team told us not to, that they didn't need it, that they didn't want it, that they couldn't afford it. But again, we're getting blamed. And now there's a bad Google review out there from somebody that blamed us for a decision that was made within the organization. That's really, really frustrating. And again, you know, our response to that was, hey, I'm sorry, I don't even know who you are because we haven't talked to you. Right. But we'd be happy to train you. You know, here's my name, here's my phone number, here's my email address. If your company authorizes us to train you guys, we'd be more than happy to. But again, it's like there's a reaction because there's a lot of assumptions being made, what was or wasn't agreed to. I mean, you know, here it is. We're the ones taking the hit for it.
Yeah, one of the challenges of broken telephone is, sometimes people just don't pass along the information because, like, footnotes complex, data normalization, data cleaning is actually a complex concept for normies. But there's another side to it, which is sometimes they break the telephone chain on purpose because they didn't want to spend the money for the training, so they told you not to. But to the internal team, they don't want to say that. They don't want to look cheap to the internal team. So it's much easier to blame the vendor.
Yep. But you know what's interesting about this is, again, I think we've gotten better at this. We've learned through trial and error, some things that we should be doing differently, some things that we need to be communicating more effectively, getting the right people in the room. But I think one of the overarching things, and you kind of alluded to it, I think you might even actually said it, but I think one of the things we've learned is sometimes it's okay to say no. We're
Yes.
we're not going to do this project if you're going already at the very beginning against our recommendation when we're the experts.
So doing a migration,
Mhm.
is there ever a time where you do recommend it? Like maybe you shouldn't even offer it if it's so risky.
Yeah, it's a hard thing. I mean, it really is a hard thing because again, quite frankly, some people are like, I mean, we need this. We're not going to have access to our old data. And, so again, that's sorry, this is a little bit in the weeds, but
Yeah. We
sometimes
like being in the
people
weeds.
sometimes people are paying for systems that cost, tens of thousands of dollars. If they're migrating from like a Sage product or maybe a NetSuite product, those are very expensive products and systems. And once you stop subscribing,
No
they
more
cut off your
access.
access, right? And so if you're migrating from another system that you're going to completely lose access to, and you're trying to move to a new system, it makes sense. I mean, you want your history. I would want it. If I was the owner and I had no idea how these things worked, I would want it too. I mean, I would absolutely want it. Yeah, I want to be able to see, 10 years worth of sales history. Why not? I mean, why wouldn't I want that? But so in those situations where they're not going to have access at all to the historical data, well, again, we can mitigate that. We can say, hey, well, before you migrate, let's go run a whole bunch of reports on those prior years. Let's run the reports. Let's send them to Excel or let's PDF them so we can have them if we need to look them up, but just not have it in your live QuickBooks data set going forward, because again, there's just so many reasons why you're probably not going to be happy. But we've learned that, okay, if you want it, let's get a different way, or let's maybe have a local copy of the company file that we can maintain on our server. And if you ever have any questions, we can go pull it up on our data, our system, but maybe not have it live in the cloud.
I love your solutions and your attempts to mitigate it. They're great. It's interesting because it's a very, very subtle sell, because this comes down to like these sort of data normalization issues. Because like I know absolutely nothing about QuickBooks, but I've seen this type of issue in other spaces. I can already imagine. Oh, in this one there's an optional field, but when you're moving to it's required. So therefore, all these are going to break, and you're just going to work like so. Like I understand that, but
Oh
had
yeah.
I not worked in enterprise software development, I those would have just confused me. No, no, no. Why can't you just like make it work?
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like you got a little bit of a data background, and I do too.
Yeah.
I graduated with an MIS degree way back a long time ago, and so I know all about fifth normal form. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I know that stuff, and I know about databases a lot. And thankfully, I'm not a programmer, anymore. It was a long time ago, but I understand the concepts. And yeah, you can't turn bad data into good data. And if you've got disconnected or redundant data all over the place and you try to move it to another place, it can be really messy. So it's it's a little sad that, the systems aren't exactly just like plug and play, exact, two opposites of the same coin. They're, just actually very different.
Yeah. Interesting. I One of my favorite techniques to help kind of mitigate these sorts of problems is on the internal systems with the users to have like huge warnings, huge banners, because it like if there are risks like this, you have to hit people in over the head. But in your case, I don't even know how feasible that is, because like QuickBooks is a set, it's not custom software. Like
Yeah.
you can't add your own pop up into QuickBooks.
Yeah, I mean, you can do some subtle things with the actual data, but not necessarily the features that the data is sitting in, right? Like a good example
Interesting.
is like in the chart of accounts, there's like income and expenses, for example, right? It's not uncommon for companies to have redundancy within the expenses when there shouldn't be. Like maybe they've got
Right.
office supplies, and then there's supplies for the office, and there's pens and paper
Yes.
for the office, right? But it's all the same thing, but
Yes.
they've created multiple.
Multiple like categories.
Yeah, because QuickBooks is very flexible, right? You can just go and you can go create an account on the fly, even if you're not like the accountant. And so it's not uncommon to have a little bit of a mess like that. And so you could create an account that says always use this, okay? Or office supplies don't or supplies for the office don't ever use,
Don't use.
but that's
That's
in
pretty
the
funny.
name because that's what you can put text in versus being able to put a pop-up on a screen that says don't do this, right? In fact, it's interesting. QuickBooks has actually gotten kind of cute in that respect, because I think they know that like normal people are using the software versus like CPAs and like true like
Yeah.
accounting people. And so like so let's say you wrote a check, you paid a bill, you made a deposit, and then you get your bank statement. Okay, you reconcile your bank statement, and you've basically checked the boxes say all these transactions are on your bank statement. You cleared, everything's done. Well, then 2 months later, you pull up that check by accident, or maybe you're looking at it and you're like, oh, this shouldn't be here, and you tried to delete it. Okay, well, that would be bad, right? You don't want to delete something you've already reconciled, right? That's
Right.
just like a no-no. Okay,
Right.
well,
Right.
QuickBooks will pop up this thing that says you really shouldn't do this. You really shouldn't do this. Because if you do, it's going to mess up this, and you're going to have to redo the reconciliations. But okay, if you want to, click this button, right? Or like type in "I'm sure," But it has some of those kind of cute little pop-ups to let you know that you really probably shouldn't be doing.
I I hadn't known that little detail, but I think it's great because too often as companies become big, they take themselves too seriously. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that they can at least use these cute little fun updates.
Oh, you want another one?
Please.
One of my favorites in that is back in the day. Again, this probably goes back probably about 15 years ago. The company I was working for, we were doing internal technical documentation for QuickBooks. Like we were part of the people that were helping make sure the help system was good. Okay. Like, you hit the F1 key, or that little question mark icon on the screen
Yes,
and it
yes,
pops
yes.
up
I
help.
remember that.
Yeah. So our company was part of a team that were helping like make that good. Okay. Make it good.
Okay.
But trying to explain some complicated topics to people who are not like formally trained bookkeepers and accountant is a struggle. So you have to kind of humanize it a lot more, say it in words that aren't big and fancy, right? And so in QuickBooks, you have the ability to switch between what is called single user mode and multi-user mode. Single user mode says nobody else can be in this company file while I'm in it because there's certain like features that I can't do certain things if I'm in multi-user mode. So I've got to kick everybody out so I can switch to single user mode so I can do some things that I need to do. But when
Okay.
everybody else needs to get back in the file and use it, I have to switch it back to multi-user mode. Well, so one of the pop-ups, like if I'm in multi-user mode and I'm switching to single user mode,
Yes.
a little pop-up that says you're now in single user mode. Enjoy your alone time with QuickBooks. It's so funny, right? It's just like,
QuickBooks and I sometimes have a romantic evening together.
yeah, right.
We can add up our credits and our debits together.
Yeah, all by ourselves with our glass of wine and whatever we're drinking.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, this has been a fascinating lesson on QuickBooks data normalization, on users, and how do you let non-specialists know about these things. Any final thoughts, comments, wisdom, wrap ups of the stories?
In terms of like, again, customer stories and like, lessons we've learned in business, I've got a few more. One more in particular that I think is really, really helpful.
Let's go for it.
Okay. So one of the interesting things about being in a business and being in a small business in particular is, if you're IBM and one of your customers doesn't pay you, okay. Yeah, I mean, you might notice it if it's a if it's like a, 100 or, like a 3, 4, 500 million dollar project, you might notice that. But, that's a massive enterprise company, right? That you notice is a multi-million dollar, non-payment. That would be a problem. But in small business, I mean, any non-payment can be a big thing, right?
Totally.
And so if you're making $1 million or 5 million or 20 million, you know, and you do a $20,000 project and you don't get paid on it, well, you've already paid your employees. I mean, you already paid your team. And so not getting paid that can make a
It could
difference
kill the
in,
company.
yeah, it can, especially if it's big. But I mean, but as a small business owner, and we work with a lot of small businesses that feel the pain even more than we do sometimes. Not getting paid really, really hurts. So one of the things that I've learned in small business is, it's easy to get paid via credit card. Okay, very easy. Somebody can pay via credit card. You invoice them and they pay it via credit card. Super easy. It's super fast. Yeah, there's fees that you have to pay and all that other stuff, but it's a really good way of getting paid. The problem is these things called chargebacks. Um,
Yes.
Chargebacks are the bane of existence when it comes to a small business because so and here's again, I don't know if all this is like 100% known to everybody in the world, but like if you go out and let's say you bank at Wells Fargo, okay, so you get a Wells Fargo credit card. Doesn't matter if it's a personal card or business card, it's a Wells Fargo credit card, okay, and then you use that Wells Fargo card to pay for something, okay, anything, product, service, whatever. Well, all you have to do is call up Wells Fargo one day and say, I didn't authorize that charge, or I don't recognize that charge, or this company did X, Y, and Z, and that's not what we agreed to. Okay. Well, you know what Wells Fargo's immediate response is?
You're right.
They take the money out of the account that money was used to pay, right? So like when we get a charge back, the bank that ultimately paid us on behalf of that client takes the money out of our account, okay, out of our bank account, and then a 2 to 3 month process starts to try to get our money back. Okay. So yeah, it took 5 seconds to get paid, but that one payment, if the customer ultimately does a chargeback, could take 2 to 3 months to resolve. And again, don't happen all the time, but we have those clients where we've done the work. Everybody said, this is great. We're happy. Months later, getting a chargeback, they take the money out. No questions asked. They take the money out and they basically say, hey, you've got 15 days to dispute this. Okay, great. So we have to go get all the documentation. We've got to waste countless hours of time trying to recreate, here's what we did, here's what we said, here's when the client said this. I mean, all the documentation just so we can dispute and get our money back. And even then, even when we have had all the documentation, it's really, really hard to get the money back because Wells Fargo doesn't have a relationship with us. They have a relationship with their cardholder.
Exactly.
And so they're incentivized, quite frankly, to not pay us back. They want to represent their cardholder. And so and I've talked with a lot of business owners, we're not alone in this. I think the success rate for winning a chargeback dispute, less than 10%. Less than 10% that you're going to get money back. We've been pretty successful at disputing those things because we get it in writing and we say, here's what we did. Here's when they said it was great. And now they're asking for a chargeback. But here's the lesson learned. So we still do take credit cards, but in less and less frequent scenarios. But what we've learned to do instead is to get paid via ACH, okay? Direct deposit, or basically the equivalent of like e-checks, right?
Checks.
Because e-checks are not as, you can't just call the bank up and say, take the money back out. right? Because they wrote a check, right? So it's not a fraud. They wrote the check, right? And so what we've done is we've moved more toward taking ACH forms of payment, or if we know it's a high risk project like these migrations, we'll say, hey, either you can pay us via ACH or you can write us a check and mail it to us, and we will deposit the check. And once we get that check, then we will start your project. But we're not going to take credit cards for a large project that's high risk, because there's just so many ways that it could go wrong. And all they have to do is click a button on their online bank and say dispute. And now we've gotten nothing.
Yeah. So credit cards, it's kind of interesting that they exist, because from the eyes of the company that accepts it, both the chargeback risk is real, and as you point out, they always win. On top of that, there's just a $25 fee or $35, even if you get just for having gotten a chargeback at most banks. So there's the chargeback risk, which is real, and then there's also the 3-ish% fee on top of that. Like, why would you even take credit cards? And it kind of made sense too. 10 years ago, when people just wanted to pay fast, quick, and easy, but now there's so many alternative methods that if I were a small business owner, I would also be phasing out credit cards for exactly these reasons.
There's some wisdom there, but it's like some of the payment methods that we might use interpersonally, they're not quite as in vogue in the business world. I mean, like, I could Zelle fund somebody, right? Or I could Venmo you, or maybe use PayPal. But all of those things like scream out personal, not business, right? But I know some vendors, right, that, hey, you can Venmo me, you can Zelle me. It's just not quite the norm within a business environment. It's just not. Checks and credit cards are still the norm.
By the way, it is. I spent a lot of my career in South America, and it's common in South America for places that accept credit cards to have an extra fee, where they'll have a sign, 5% extra fee if you use the credit card. I see that all the time, which note is against the MasterCard and Visa rules.
Exactly. Exactly.
So technically they're not able to do it, but guess what? They do it anyway.
Yeah, and by the way, you're the first person that I've ever spoke to that knew that. So I'm pretty smart guy here.
But you knew that as well.
Yeah, it's against the merchant agreement. You're not allowed to do that. But it's so companies try to get around it by saying, well, we're going to give you a discount if you pay via cash. So it's kind of like the reverse of adding a fee if you pay with a credit card. So sometimes they'll do that instead. It's like, well, normally it'd be $103, but we're going to charge you $100 if you pay cash. Yeah, I mean, it's silly. It's just games people play, but yeah.
Yeah, so there are I hadn't quite thought about it until this conversation, but all this kind of makes me want to like short Visa and MasterCard. Like their business model makes less and less sense.
Well, I would never advise doing that. I don't think they're going anywhere. I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I think at least in America, at least in the States, people are in love with their credit.
Yeah, that is true. Lots of people do need their credit cards for even basic survival.
Yeah. I would not short MasterCard, Visa, credit card, Amex, any of those.
That is a good point. That basically they can get away with chargebacks, huge fees, and so on, because it's just a form of giving people free money. So as a result, they can do these extreme and difficult things.
Yeah. So like I said, we've learned a lot of things. We've made mistakes, but we try to get better and smarter every day and every year.
My final comment on chargebacks would also be, I've known or interacted with a bit too many people that purposely take advantage of chargebacks. That it's one thing to be like, okay, no, we were unhappy. It's also another thing if it's, let's say, ambiguous, maybe not.
Yeah.
But there's like this universe of people there that buy things like, okay, I'll do the chargeback, I'll get it for free, because customers love credit cards, and like Amex is the king of this, where they know they'll get the money back, and they know they'll win no matter what. And if the customer is always right, like I can just be a little bit annoying and then do a chargeback. I've even known a couple of people that threaten to do chargebacks.
Yeah.
And people are crazy.
No, it happens. I mean, it's just like anything, right? There's, in the population, there are people that will take advantage and won't take advantage. And there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that aren't even thinking about it, right? But, it's the bad ones that cause the problems for the good ones.
This whole podcast is about helping people identify the bad ones, deal with them, and preempt it. So if anyone listening is considering starting a business and taking credit cards online, be careful about the people who spread in chargebacks or take advantage of those.
Yeah. Or get a piece of paper that says, I authorize you to charge my card for this project. I understand that there are no refunds. I accept full responsibility for the outcome, And then when the thing is delivered, have them sign something at the end that says, I approve the work. It was perfect. I accept responsibility going forward. Have it so clearly in writing that the customer was happy and approved and everything, maybe before you deliver a final product or whatever it might be, because that's really what it takes, almost that level of documentation to win a chargeback.
Yeah, just a few hours ago, I was on the phone with an Argentine friend of mine, and I taught him the amazingly useful phrase CYA. And just having a whole bunch of best CYA practices goes so far in helping minimize a lot of client horror stories.
Yeah, very true.
And with that, Brad, it's been fun getting to know you. I love the couple different stories. I love learning all about QuickBooks and their fun pop-up messages, chargebacks. This was great. Thank you for your time, for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. It was fun.
And everyone watching, we hope you've made it here to the end, and we hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Until next time.